Hello, and thank you for joining me at Spooky Reviews. I'm the Ghostess, and I know a thing or two about a haunting. After watching a different horror movie every day for almost 3 years, some definitely stood out from the crowd. Last week I explored the ones that stapled themselves to my brain by shocking the system. Today I'm going to look at the ones that planted subtle little seeds that grew over time into weeping willows. When provocative concepts can be effectively conveyed through clear artistic intention that navigates difficult content with appropriate imagery and an even tone, a film goes from fine to unforgettable. And today I'm going to look at movies that didn't just leave a mark, but ended up tattooed on my soul. They may be with me forever, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Without further ado, here are the 13 most haunting horror movies of all time. Let's begin the countdown with number 13, Soft and Quiet, 2022. Gotta say, I was pretty surprised by this movie, especially knowing nothing going into it. It's a home invasion horror thriller that takes place in real time, with increasingly upsetting turns around every corner. It follows a gathering of white women, who appear on the outside to be typical suburbanites, but turn out to be anything but, or, more honestly, reveal themselves to be exactly what you're afraid they are. It was fascinating, but extremely unpleasant, burning its way through my brain and onto this list. Number 12, Dark Water, 2002. J-horror really made a splash in the early 2000s, arguably starting with The Ring, and known primarily for its signature feature of a ghostly girl with long black hair. But this movie stands out from the crowd by focusing on mother-daughter relationships and the trauma of abandonment, just as much as the haunted apartment building. While the American remake starring Jennifer Connelly is fine, I wouldn't exactly call Connelly an actress with a lot of emotional range. The actors in the original have so much passion and force behind all of their performances, particularly from the children. On a strange note, one of the weirder things about this movie is that its plot bears a striking resemblance to the fate of Elisa Lam, a Canadian tourist who died at the Cecil Hotel under mysterious circumstances, with her last known footage going viral for her bizarre behavior in an elevator. While you might see this movie and go, oh, it must have been inspired by Elisa Lam, it couldn't have been because it came out 11 years before that happened to her. While the movie is haunting enough on its own, that little real-world detail makes it all the more eerily plausible. Number 11, Santa Sangre, 1990. Alejandro Jodorowsky's surreal circus-centered psychological slasher visually entrances and creates atmospheric insanity. There are so many bizarre little things that stand out in my mind with this storyline and the imagery that goes along with it. Even things that are not consequential to the plot end up being disturbing, like when the director filmed an actual sequence of villagers ripping apart an elephant. Using both English and Spanish, the film tells a story that unfolds like a strange dream and keeps your eyes absolutely glued to the screen for all 122 minutes of runtime. Number 10, Speak No Evil, 2022. Gotta say, 2022, pretty good year for haunting horror. This Dutch, Danish, and English language thriller pushes social discomfort toward an unnerving edge, and becomes an experiment in frustration with characters who won't do more actions in their own best interest for the sake of social niceties. The way the whole thing unfolds is clearly saying something about people unwilling to stir the pot in order to stand up for what they believe in, and the manipulators who take advantage of it. I haven't seen the Blumhouse remake, although based on the trailer it seems to have a very similar pattern of events. But I have a feeling that the American characters are going to have a little bit more fight in them than their international counterparts. The film is gripping, and the ending has a very upsetting sequence of events, the consequences of which are some of the bleakest in my horror movie memories. Number 9, Piggy, 2022. This unique Spanish thriller acts as sort of a bizarre coming-of-age story, following an overweight teenage girl, uncomfortable in her own skin, who witnesses her ruthless bullies when they're kidnapped by a mysterious yet compelling stranger. There are some truly beautiful shots in this movie. It's very intense, but still earns a few chuckles out of quirky little juxtapositions between the situation and the routine of her family life. There's a weirdly bittersweet, romantic tone to some of the interactions. And, in case you're blind, as a heavyweight champion myself, I find this story personally all too relatable, which also helps it stand out in my heart. Number 8. Get Out, 2017. Jordan Peele's cinematic directorial debut blended terror, humor, and social commentary into a delicious little dish. Using an original concept, he created imagery that has already cemented itself in the landscape of modern horror, and used it to explore race relations in a way that didn't feel like it was preaching to you, while still effectively getting the point across. It depicts a lot of subtle, insidious racism, the kind that thinks it's coming from a good place, because its motivation isn't wrath, it's envy, and fetishizing a group of people is not the same as respecting them. Outside of just the message, this film's lasting power is also due to its unique psychological concept, great acting, and moments that still make me laugh and gasp every single time I see it. Number 7. Le Tour, aka The Tower, 2022. After a mysterious, murderous darkness isolates an apartment complex, an apocalyptic gangland unfolds between the floors. Not only does this film hit you with the social commentary, using the building's residents as a microcosm for society, it also managed to invent a terrifying new means of death, as people simply vanish into the unknown surrounding them. It shows the horrific acts that people will perform when they're desperate to survive in a world of dwindling resources. Number 6. Somos lo que hay, aka We Are What We Are, 2010. It's a fascinating Mexican drama that explores power dynamics within a cannibalistic clan after their patriarch passes away. It's eerily unhinged, with a rawness that pulls you all the way down into its own sort of twisted logic. And it even seems to take place in the same universe as Kronos, what with Tito the coroner reprising his role. There was a remake in 2013 that Americanized the storyline and kept the plot strangely the same but opposite, set in the country instead of a city, with the genders basically switched. It's prettier and softer, and it is very well made, but it's far less compelling than the insanity of the original. Number 5. Saint Maud, 2019. If you're searching for a deeply disturbing journey into someone else's psychology, then I cannot recommend this indie darling from the UK any higher. The atmosphere is palpable, with polished visual storytelling, as you slowly begin to understand the protagonist's spiritual journey and its relationship with suffering. Even with a runtime under 90 minutes, the tension is densely packed and burns brightly right to the very end. Number 4. His House, 2020. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend you check it out on Netflix. It follows the struggle of African immigrants after seeking refuge in the UK, haunted by guilt, regret, and the trauma of having to flee their home country. It utilizes a gorgeous technique that is tremendously effective in slowly doling out the scares. Both of the leads give powerhouse performances that make this film seem very grounded despite its supernatural elements. It explores harsh realities that take some time to sink in, and does so in a way that doesn't feel alienating to its viewers. It's the kind of movie that gives me shivers down my heart, and I'm sure my heart won't part with it anytime soon. Number 3. Jacob's Ladder, 1990. A veteran returns from Vietnam psychologically traumatized, and as his mind unravels, so does his identity and the world around him. Hellish imagery merges with grim realities to brilliantly capture psychological torment. It's a gripping, trippy, contemplative nightmare, made all the more intriguing by Tim Robbins' performance. It resembles cinematic poetry, portraying the anguishes of life and the lives we could have lived. And it's the sort of film I think even non-horror fans could appreciate, even if only for the cinematography. Number 2. Climax, 2018. I can't begin to tell you how riveting this film truly is. After someone spikes the punch with acid, a bon voyage party for a French dance troupe deteriorates into an absolute nightmare, exploring how the uninhibited id makes for a dangerous combination with mob mentality. On the fringe end of New French extremism, this movie manages to be brilliantly beautiful while creating chaos. It has endlessly incredible choreography, with an enthralling ensemble of characters from across the globe, and drifts so fluidly from one storyline to the next, with most of the story depicted in one long continuous shot that weaves its way across the elaborate set. This movie has a lot of upsetting imagery surrounding a variety of assaults: emotional, psychological, physical, and sexual. And there are definitely some moments that I cannot ever scrub from my brain when it comes to the grounded brutality of their consequences. But I still highly recommend this movie to just about anyone who think they might be able to stomach it in order to witness what I truly believe is a dazzling piece of cinema. And here are a few haunting horrors that didn't quite make the cut. And the number one most haunting horror of all time is The Vanishing, 1988. A Dutch and French language psychological thriller from the Netherlands delves into the emotional psyches of two men, one desperately seeking answers around his girlfriend's disappearance, and the other the man who made her disappear. There was an American remake done in 1993, but it's an entirely different monster altogether. It's paced much more like your typical American thriller, focuses more on the action sequences, and isn't as interested in the deep psychological journey that the original makes. It has a lot to say about obsessive morbid curiosity, and has an amazing cat and mouse style tension between the two main characters. There are a couple punch in the guts that I can never forget, and there's something just so tragically beautiful about it that it had to climb its way up this list. So those were, in my humble opinion, the 13 most haunting horror movies of all time. If I missed any of your favorites, let me know in the comments, but also be sure to check out the rest of this series. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me at Spooky Ghostess on Twitter, and join me next time for another spooky review. Boo for now. Let me know if I missed any of your favorites in the comments below. Let me know in the comments below if I missed any of your favorites. Watch your modifiers.